about me. In fact, it's already started. Don't buy it. Here's all you need to know about me. I'm here to fight for you and your family. And Canada needs a fighter.
You are going to hear the Liberal spin about me. Don't buy it. Here is what you need to know about me. I am here to fight for you and your family, and Canada needs a fighter.
Because everything is not okay. From coast to coast to coast, Canadians are losing their jobs, their homes, and their hope. Even before the pandemic, half of Canadian families were just one surprise $200 expense away from not being able to pay their rent or their bills. Now millions of Canadians are barely getting by. I know how many of you are more concerned about the future than ever before. My family and I feel the same way. Parents are up late at night worrying about what might happen during a second wave of COVID-19 or when emergency programs end. My wife, Rebecca, and I understand the challenges, fears, and hopes of the middle class because we live them and we have our whole lives. We know what it is like to save for your first home, what it is like to save for things like childcare, tuition, and family vacations. We know what it is like to worry about our kids and their anxiousness about a return to school.
And Rebecca and I know how this pandemic has affected families, how our seniors have suffered in long-term care facilities. We also know about the hope that our soldiers brought to the residents of those facilities, their bravery when they came out to help. It is that bravery that inspires me.
Raised in a General Motors middle-class family in a neighborhood where everyone looked out for one another. We were taught to have each other's backs and to help out. My entire life, I've tried to serve Canada and its people in uniform, as a volunteer, and as a member of Parliament.
All my life, I've wanted to serve Canada and Canadians, be it in uniform, as a volunteer, and as an MP.
Trudeau would rather play politics than do his job. Even now, with our country still in a crisis, he may be trying to trigger an early election. Because of that, I may soon be asking Canadians for the chance to serve as Prime Minister so we can get this country back on track. I love this country, and I'm very worried about the course we are on. Our country is currently facing the most serious economic challenge since the Great Depression. Capital and job opportunities have been leaving Canada, and the Liberals ran large deficits and debt before the COVID crisis led to record deficits and debt. And he's used the crisis as an excuse to help his friends, yet again. It's time to stop catering to insiders and special interests. It's time to put working Canadians first. It
is time to stop catering to insiders and special interests. It's time to put working Canadians first.
As Prime Minister, I will lead a government that rebuilds our economy and creates long-term, good-paying jobs with ambitious national projects, infrastructure, and federal programs to make it easier for people to get ahead. We will trade freely with free nations and not spend our time chasing trade deals with predatory countries like Communist China. We can rebuild our great country while protecting Canadians from the ongoing threat of COVID-19. We can get Canadians back to work. We can be proud of the things we grow, build, and produce in Canada again. We can have a government that will keep us safe and ensure we are never ill-prepared again. In fact, we must. We
can have a government that keeps us safe and that will never be taken by surprise again. In fact, we must. To do that, we need a leader who has experience in the real world. Someone who isn't afraid of making difficult decisions.
A leader who cares more about keeping Canadians safe and united than about his personal image and the interests of insiders. We need a leader who puts Canadians first and who will stand up for Canada and our interests in a challenging world where we've lost the respect of our friends and allies. I said I would be ready on day one, and I was. On my first opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister, I raised my deep concerns about Western alienation and a need for a plan to address real and serious national unity issues. Because Western alienation is so significant a threat to Canadian unity, I don't believe we have even one day to spare. We need to get to work. On day one, I also spoke with Justin Trudeau about prorogation and parliamentary oversight. I spoke with Premiers Kenney, Moe, and Ford, and I'm arranging an in-person meeting with Premier Legault. I put forward a team for the office of the Leader of the Opposition, the party, and the national campaign. Soon, I will announce my shadow cabinet. Our Conservative team is a strong, smart, diverse group that reflects Canada. But Canadians haven't always seen themselves in our party. I'm going to change that. Because as I said in the wee hours of Monday morning, and I'm going to repeat it because it's so important, whether you're black, white, brown, or from any race or creed, whether you're LGBT or straight, whether you're an Indigenous Canadian or have joined the Canadian family 3 weeks ago or 3 generations ago, whether you're doing well or barely getting by, whether you worship on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, or not at all, you are an important part of Canada, and you have a home in the Conservative Party of Canada. It's time for many Liberal and NDP voters to socially distance themselves from parties who care more about their votes than their values.
And what about the Bloc Québécois? The truth is that the Bloc is outdated. It revives when Justin Trudeau disregards Quebecers. It will be a very different story with me. It is time for Quebec to have a seat at the decision-making table, and I will say this again. Nationalist Quebecers have an important place in the Conservative Party.
I want more Canadians to see a Conservative when they look in the mirror. Union members, small business owners, new Canadians, and more women. If you want the opportunity to work hard to provide for your family, you should be voting Conservative. If you want to stop insiders from getting ahead while you are falling back, you should be voting Conservative. If you are proud of what we produce in this country, whether it's the resources in the ground or the ideas in our heads, you should be voting Conservative. And if you believe in peace, order, and good ethical government, you should be voting Conservative. Thank you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
We'll now start the question period. I'm told we have about 15 minutes. We'll start with questions on the phone, 2 questions on the phone, and turn to the room with as many questions as we can. Just a reminder, 1 question, 1 follow-up. Nous allons maintenant commencer la période de questions. Une question et une question de suivi. On va commencer avec les questions au téléphone. Operator, first question on the floor, on the phone.
Thank you. Our first question is from Dylan Robertson from the Winnipeg Free Press. Please go ahead, à vous la parole.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. You mentioned the need for a plan to deal with Western alienation with the Prime Minister. Can you please give us any specifics that can be done during the ongoing pandemic?
Well, the reason I raised that question directly with the Prime Minister yesterday, after our nice courtesies and discussion about family, is they're planning a throne speech and an economic rebuilding plan. And if they continue to leave out the ability for our resource sector to get Canadian resources to market, we're going to see more Western alienation. We're going to see less jobs and opportunity for Canadians in Ontario and Atlantic Canada. So we need to make sure that Canada's strength in natural resources is part of that economic plan. We can do that while reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but we have to be proud of what we produce here in Canada.
I'm wondering if you see Western alienation only as an issue of natural resources, and if you think these tensions have stayed the same or if they've changed over the course of COVID-19.
It has to do with the ability of any Canadian province to live to its potential and provide job opportunities for its people. It's about respecting our Constitution and the provincial autonomy in areas of the economy and a number of areas. It's about collaboration and not confrontation. And we've seen a Liberal government over 4 years force an Ottawa knows best approach, not just in the West, but with Quebec, with Ontario. I want to make sure we partner for the well-being of Canadians.
Opératrice, prochaine question au téléphone.
Thank you, merci. Notre prochaine question est de Michel Lamarche de TVA. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, Monsieur O'Toole.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. Your speech on the environment, pipelines, guns, and private members' bills on abortion, that's the same thing as what Andrew Scheer says. Are you ready to change, to sway the Quebec electorate? Answer. I received the support of thousands of Quebecers, and I am proud of my team in Quebec. I won the leadership race as a pro-choice member, as someone who has a very clear record on social issues, and that will be my approach as Leader of the Opposition and as Prime Minister. I will be absolutely clear. I will defend people's rights, all Canadians' rights.
I am an MP with a clear track record on standing up for human rights, whether it's women, whether it's the LGBT community. I won the leadership of the Conservative Party as a pro-choice Conservative MP, one that won with a strong mandate. That's how I'm going to lead as the Leader of the Opposition, and that's how I will be as Prime Minister. I'm in politics to defend the rights of Canadians, to secure a brighter future.
Michel, une question de suivi?
Bien sûr, vous avez parlé à
Follow-up question. You spoke to Justin Trudeau yesterday. Are you ready to negotiate with the government with regard to the throne speech and the content of that speech? Or do you already intend to vote down the speech? Answer. We will talk about the throne speech in the future. Yesterday, we mostly spoke about the issues in the West and the situation with prorogation. I would like to have debates in September, and I would like the parliamentary committees to be up and running as well. And I said that yesterday in my conversations with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Turn to the room. Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions dans la salle.
Bonjour, Monsieur O'Toole. Catherine Lévesque de la
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. Catherine Lévesque, Presse canadienne. Why do you want to meet François Legault in person, and what do you intend to talk about with him? Answer. I have a great deal of respect for Premier Legault. He has done very good work during the pandemic, and I respect that a great deal. I know Premier Kenny, obviously, and Premier Ford. So it's important for me to connect with Premier Legault as a member, as the Leader of the Opposition, because I would like to work very closely with him with regard to the well-being of Quebecers. Answer. Question. So you were elected in Quebec thanks to the gun lobby there, and in other parts of the country you were able to get the support of social conservatives. And so I was wondering, do you feel like you owe those groups something as the leader of the Conservative Party and perhaps eventually Prime Minister? Answer. I will treat all of our members with respect. As I said in English, I was elected as a pro-choice MP with a clear position with regard to public safety and the gun situation. It was unfair of the government to go ahead without a debate during a pandemic and harm people who are actually following the rules. So I will take that up in September as well. Mr. O'Toole, congratulations. In your platform, you promised, and I quote, that you will make sure that Quebec is never underrepresented in the House of Commons, regardless of its demographic weight. So I'd like to get a bit more details about what you have in mind. So are you thinking about the Charlottetown Accord, saying 25 seats in Quebec, regardless of what happens with the population? Answer, no, not like Charlottetown, not an exact number, but it has to be fair, as Mr. Harper did after the last census in the country. It's important for Quebecers, it's important for Canadians in the West as well, to have the degree of representation that is appropriate in the House of Commons, because there are challenges with the Senate in our Constitution. So it's important to make sure that we have the members of the House of Commons to represent Quebec interests. Question. During the campaign, Derek Sloan was criticized for having questioned the allegiance of Dr. Tam. Some people during the race even said that he should be expelled from caucus, and Andrew Scheer said, well, there's a race underway, this is not the time. The leadership race is over, you are the leader. Should there be sanctions against Mr. Sloan? Answer. During a leadership race, there are pressures, there can be little fights, but that's over. We are united as a party now, and I will speak to Derek and to all of the members during my first meeting with them.
In a leadership race, there's always some pressure, there's ideas, there's a contrast of ideas, and that's finished. I received a clear mandate, and I'm very excited to meet with my caucus and talk with all of them about uniting and going forward together, and I'll be doing that in the coming days and weeks.
It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. Brian Mulroney said yesterday that bringing your leadership opponents into the fold is one way that you could increase the unity in your party. Today, Derek Sloan sent out a blast to supporters in which he said that you told him that you admired his campaign. I'm wondering if you've identified any supporting roles for those members of your opponents in the leadership race.
I've already reached out to Leslyn Lewis and to Peter MacKay. We'll be having phone calls with them today. When I delivered a speech at 1:30 in the morning, yesterday ended up being a little occupied and busy, but I have great respect for all my colleagues. Derek and I had some very stark differences. We had some areas of overlap with our concern about the Communist Party of China. In some issues, I didn't agree with some of the ways he characterized those concerns. But certainly within a pandemic, within the race we were in, a lot of things are said. We're united now. We're going to talk together as a caucus soon.
And as a follow-up, the Conservative Party has for months raised concerns with the way in which the government was handling the COVID-19 crisis and delivering funding to Canadians. I'm wondering, now that you have won the leadership, whether you intend on voting against the throne speech, potentially triggering an election, and also what do you intend to do to hold the government to account differently this sitting?
Well, look, I asked to pause the leadership race and offered to even sit in a joint cabinet in the middle of a crisis, because I always put the country first. I think the Liberal Party was a month and a half slow with the border, slow with PPE, and slow with the wage subsidy and economic responses. I'm here to fight for the well-being of Canadians across the country and for better solutions, faster responses, and excellence in government and ethical government. And we will assess the government going forward on all those criteria. But in the midst of the first wave, when all families were worried and concerned, I asked for a delay in the race to concentrate on my role as an MP. I spoke with several ministers directly to try and improve the CERB, try and improve the wage subsidy. I will always put the interests of Canadian first, and will collaborate when I can. So if Mr. Trudeau thinks he can play some games with a new leader and force an election, we will be ready. But I will also hold him to account. That's why I mentioned the return to committees once the prorogation is over. Je vais travailler en collaboration pour le bien-être canadien et canadienne comme chef
work cooperatively for the well-being of Canadians.
Premier ministre,
As leader of the opposition, I will work with the Prime Minister. I did it during the pandemic. During the leadership race, I worked with the government on the emergency programs like the CERB and other programs. And that is the approach that I will take as leader of the opposition. We will be ready for an election, but I will focus on the well-being of Canadians and not on an election. Question. This morning, once again, you said that you are a pro-choice MP, but in 2016, you voted for Bill C-225 that wanted to give legal rights to the fetus. How can you reconcile that vote with the fact that you say that you are pro-choice? Answer. That is incorrect. It was a bill on public safety, in fact, and I voted in favor to have debate in committee on that bill because it was on public safety for women, and that is my approach. It's possible to listen to people and to be a pro-choice MP. That is going to be my approach. Question. But women's rights advocates will tell you that that's the kind of bill that tries to open up cracks, to reopen the debate on abortion. How can you reassure people who may think that? Answer. That was a bill on criminal sentencing, actually. And I have a completely clear track record on social issues as an MP. That's not the case for Justin Trudeau, because in 2013, I was the first of only 18 Conservatives who voted for a bill for the LGBT community. Mr. Trudeau missed the vote for a fundraising activity for the Ontario Liberal Party. But I have a clear record, but that Mr. Trudeau does not.
The Liberals will be trying to work their little spin cycle, and they're already starting. I have a track record of always voting in favor of rights, whether it's the rights of women with respect to choice, whether it's the LGBT community. In my first months as an MP, I was the first Conservative of 18 to support an LGBT bill. I will always stand and defend the rights of Canadians. Justin Trudeau skipped the vote, a very close vote, to attend a Cash for Access fundraiser with the Liberals in Toronto. So you'll see where his priorities are. My priorities will be on Canadians.
I am told this is the last question. CBC?
Perfect.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would like to start off by Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News.
From Nova Scotia.
From Nova Scotia as well, yeah. I'd like to start by asking you, in the last election, Mr. Scheer was just unable to capture, the Canadian side of the votes. You did get more seats, yes, I realize that. But how will you be different than Andrew Scheer?
I have a lot of respect for Andrew, and I thanked him for his service. He's an important member of the team. I have a track record of serving Canada and getting things done. That's why I'm not famous. I'm not well known. I get things done. I don't drop the ball, and I've always fought for Canadians since I left high school and joined the military, as a volunteer, as a parent, as an MP, a backbencher who worked my way to the front. I have no famous name. I just fight for Canadians. And after the pandemic, with record deficits, with the challenges we face in the world, we need a fighter. We need someone who came from the middle class to serve Canada ethically and professionally at home and on the world stage. That is what Canadians will get with me. I think we're tired of a directionless, divisive, and ethically challenged Liberal government.
I want to follow up by asking you, during the campaign, you ran the True Blue campaign, which attracted that right Conservative vote. But right away in your speech, you were trying to appeal to a broader audience, and some in the Conservative Party have already said you're moving to the mushy middle. How do you respond to that?
I think that's not true. I'm quite true blue today. I'm wearing my blue. I'm going to be a bit of a sea change for Canadians because, you know what? I respect people even when I don't agree with them. I want a mandate, not hiding my track record on all my voting records as being a pro-choice MP by being pro-LGBT. I also will stand up for small business owners, for Canadians from coast to coast. I want a strong mandate, and I'm not afraid to fight for things I believe in, and I'm not afraid to respect people that have another point of view. That is why the Conservatives can win, when we respect one another in our coalition, when Canadians respect people in other provinces, even if they've never met them. That needs to be the return to politics. I've never seen the country more divided after 4 years of Mr. Trudeau. There was no national unity crisis when we were in government. There's a serious one now. And that's why we need a fighter, and we need someone that can build bridges and respect other points of view. That's my track record, and as people get to know me, they will see that's how I will be as Prime Minister.
So why don't you stay and take more questions if you want people to get to know you? Because 15 minutes is kind of silly.
Because I've got so much work to do, Tanya, but as you know, I will be accessible, accountable, and professional as our leader, because I want to win the support of Canadians, and that will be my approach.
I am here as a member of Parliament, as the Leader of the Opposition, to fight for the well-being of Canadians. I have a track record on that as a member of Parliament. I have a lot of experience in the armed forces, in the private sector, as a minister, and I am ready for the challenges we face right now. And it's time for a serious Prime Minister, and that is what I will be. Thank you very much.
The new Conservative leader, the Leader of the official opposition in Canada, Erin O'Toole, at his first news conference taking questions from reporters.